Hey, what's up everybody, it's Axel, and today we're going to be talking about the Arpegear Hane. The Hane is a 10mm single dynamic driver IEM. Comes in around $129, and it's by Arpegear. Arpegear is a brand or sub-brand of topping. Probably heard of them if you're into DACs and IEMs. And let's start. Let's see what comes in the box. You get this carrying case for 6 pairs of ear tips that are included. You get 3 pairs of silicone ear tips, 2 pairs of foams, and 1 pair of an ear tip that kind of looks like a spring ear tip. And then you get this very nice manual, shows you how to wear the IEM, what the switches do, and shows you the measured frequency response graph effects of using the switches. And then you get this small carrying pouch, which is on the small side, especially when you look at the size of the cable and length of the cable that's provided, you know, and if you want to carry a dongle or something, you're not be able to fit it inside. And then you get this SIM card tool, which is essential if you want to use the tuning switches of this IEM. Now the cable here is a bit on the long side. It's 1.5 meters. It does have some slight memory, but you know, no microphonics, and it could tangle if you're not careful when you're wrapping it, because it's a long cable and it has this cloth-like material. But the thing I want to talk about here is it's a single-ended cable, and you know, 99% of the time I have no issues with it. But the thing is, the Arpegear Hane has an impedance of 80 ohms, and it's, you know, at least when you're not using the switches, it's maybe okay, a bit challenging. You need some power, but if you decide to use the switches, I think they make it less sensitive, and you need to have something that has a bit more power. And I will give a few examples. When I used 2 switches, I could max out my BTR7, FEO BTR7 Bluetooth DAC amp. I could max out the FEO K11 dongle. Even when I'm using my topping desktop setup, which has an 890 amplifier, using balanced input for that amplifier, I'm actually listening at middle gain. I'm listening at 1 to 2 o'clock, and on tracks that have a high dynamic range I could sometimes even use more. I'm not even a loud listener, so it doesn't like require lots of juice. But using single-ended, if you're using DAPs or desktop setups, you're not going to notice that. But if you find that you're using dongles with it and you need some more power, need a bit more volume, maybe you can try a balanced cable, and maybe you will not need that even. Now let's talk about the design. The earpieces here are made out of resin. Nozzle diameter here is around 6 millimeters, which is on the average side. For me, I had no issues with the fit and comfort, but it does have, you know, a bit of an angle to the nozzle. If you're one of those people who, you know, this could be an issue for you, you can see it does a bit of an angle. Maybe you try different sizes of ear tips. Slightly recessed 2-pin connector, nice, and you get, of course, the tuning switches. So let's talk about the sound now. Let's bring up the frequency response graph. I will start by talking about the stock tuning, and then I'll move on to talk about the switches and what they do. If we look at the graph, you know, the moment I listened to this, I was thinking of the Moondrop K2 and the cadence for some reason, and I think I kind of know why now, because the stock tuning is kind of similar, not exact, but kind of similar to the Moondrop VDSF tuning that we see on the K2 and the cadence and other Moondrop IEMs, and it definitely has some similarities with Harman style of tuning, at least when it comes to the mid-range, at least. So let's start talking about the bass. Now, this type of tuning in general kind of emphasizes the upper mid-range, but when looking at the bass here, I will describe it as decent. It's not spectacular. It's clean. It's not bloated or, you know, boomy or anything, and it does have a small amount of texture to it, but it's not exactly the type of bass that's very textured and, you know, like some other IEMs you listen to around this price range. And the impact, I will describe it as a bit on the light side. The attack is a bit slightly on the soft side, and even when I use the switches to increase that bass, the quality of the bass didn't change. The amount increased, but it's not, you know, different. It's the same type of bass. So texture, okay. And I think if I would describe this bass in one word, I would use the word decent. I think this word captures really how I feel about the bass of the Arpegear Hane. In terms of the mid-range, out of the box, I feel the mid-range has some excess energy for me personally, but in terms of the quality of the mid-range, I think it's nice. Male and female vocals sound accurate, you know, but there is an emphasis on the mid-range here. I want to talk about that. There is an emphasis, there is a highlight. So this is a tuning in general. This whole tonality kind of puts an emphasis on the upper mid-range, and it sounds highlighted, it sounds emphasized, and it stands out in the music. So if you like mid-range, you know, if you like a lot of instruments, if you like vocals, maybe you're going to like this tuning right here. For me, I would love to see it a bit toned down a bit, and that's where the magic of the tuning switches, you know, comes in, and it allowed me to do that. But I will talk about the switches and what they do in a second. Talking about the treble, I think it's nice, it has good enough definition. Notes are a bit on the incisive side. Again, maybe it's a bit, just a touch more than I would like to see here, but again, the tuning switches kind of fix that thing for me. Anyway, like, I think the tuning tuning here is nice. It emphasizes the mid-range and the vocals, but still doesn't have any thin mid-range or doesn't have thick mid-range. I think it has proper note weights. It doesn't have that tuck around the mid-bass or anything like that. So, you know, nice. Let's talk about the tuning switches and what they do. I think, first of all, before I talk about that, guys, I think the implementation here is absolute genius. They did something that's actually useful and something that does work, does something. Like, I love the DUNU SA6 Mark II switch. You know, I think it does something, but this takes it to a whole nother level. And every switch, I could see it doing something for someone, you know, and the whole idea of it, how to use it and how to mix and match is absolutely wonderful. Let's talk about quickly what they do. Switch number 1 gives you a subtle sub-bass boost without affecting the vocal clarity. I think that's nice. I think it makes it more accurate, fills out some of that sub-bass. Switch number 2 boosts the sub-bass and the mid-bass and adds a bit of fullness to the mid-range as well. Timbre improves when you use switch number 2, and it's absolutely one of my favorite switches on the Hane. Switch number 3 tones down some of that upper mid-range energy, but we do trade off some amount loss of detail here. That's going to happen when you use switch number 3, but I think it's worth it. It's going to make it sound more pleasing, non-fatiguing, you know, easier to listen to. Switch number 4 increases the upper mids and treble for a brighter, more energetic tuning. Not a switch I'm going to use. I tried it, not my favorite. And of course, the best thing about it is that you can mix and match those tunings to create anything, you know, like the abilities or, you know, the possibilities you get here are a lot, right? Like if you use tuning switch number 3, which is a great switch, you're going to get a more balanced tuning, right? If you use like switch number 1 and 2, you're going to make it a more of a bass head tuning, right? If you use switch 1, 2, and 4, you're going to get a very V-shaped type of tuning, right? About myself, if someone asks me like, Axel, which switches, you know, which switch configuration did you use and prefer, I would say I use switch number 2 and 3 at the same time. Switch number 2 added that sub bass and mid bass and gave it a bit of fullness, improved the timbre, and I like that amount of extra bass. And switch number 3 kind of toned down that upper mid-range and treble a bit that I was talking about, making it more pleasing, more non-fatiguing, something I can listen to for hours. So those two combined, you know, with the timbre and fullness and the proper note weight, sounded pretty nice to my ears. Let's talk about the technicalities and detail. I will describe the detail level of the Arpegear Hane as average. It does have some good enough detail, but despite that ultra-low distortion of 0.05%, I didn't find that ultra-low distortion made it like super resolving or anything like that. Soundstage and imaging, layering, separation, I think all these categories, I think I will describe them also as average. Let's talk about the comparison segment. Let's start with the Truthear Nova. They have similar cables here. I will say the Nova has a bit more detail, a bit more separation, absolutely. In terms of stock tuning against stock tuning, I think the tuning of the Nova is a bit better. The bass has better quality and the treble is a bit smoother. One of the advantages of going with the hybrid configuration, you can see that here. But again, like the Hane here offers that tuning switch advantage and gives you, you know, much more configurations and tuning options. Like when I use the Nova, to be honest, I always have an EQ ready where I add, you know, 1 or 2 dBs of mid bass just to add a bit of an impact and fullness. Another one here I will talk about is the DUNU Kima 2. I reviewed this one recently. The difference here is very significant. Like number 1, the DUNU Kima 2 is a step or 2 above the Arpegear Hane when it comes to detail, separation, layering, imaging. The tonality of the Kima 2 is a bit warmer sounding, so, you know, the upper mid range is a bit more reserved, a bit more controlled. The treble again is controlled, and I think it's something I listen to without using any switch. It fits me right out of the box. I just wish it had a bit more sub bass. The bass, I feel the bass of the Kima 2 is of higher quality in terms of the texture, in terms of the impact, the slam. In terms of the detail as well, I said it's more detailed. And the timbre, I feel the Kima 2 has much more natural sounding timbre. Let's talk about who I recommend the Arpegear Hane to. I will say like this: if you're someone who values versatility, you like to experiment with different sound signatures, I think the Arpegear Hane here is a fantastic choice, right? The 4 tuning switches that you get with the Arpegear Hane open up a world of possibilities of different sound signatures, and it allows you even to change the sound to fit your preferences, the same way I did with mine when I listened to it and I used switch 2 and 3. So whether you like a bit more bass, you know, a lower mid-range or brighter treble, you're going to get that with the Hane. It will allow you to get, you know, all these different sound signatures. And it's an advantage if you know, you want to get a few different tunings, you know, without buying a few IEMs. And this is a great option for someone who's starting in the hobby. I recommend it for people starting in this hobby, or people who want to learn about what type of sound signature they enjoy the most. I think for this price, and instead of buying a few different IEMs and listening to them, Get one IEM like this. See what you like. You know, do you like a lot of bass? Do you like a lower mid-range than that? Do you find this mid-range too much? Do you like a brighter treble? You're going to discover, you know, what is the sound signature that fits you the most, and I think it's fantastic for this. Who I don't recommend this to: if you're someone who wants to get the most detailed IEM, you know, the best technical performance at this price range, I think maybe the Hane is not going to be for you. If you're someone who prioritizes bass quality, you know, again, like we saw with the Kima 2 or something like that, it's not going to be the set for you here. It has good enough, you know, but it's not going to excel in these things like bass quality or capturing the micro details, right? I don't recommend it if you don't have, you want to use the tuning switches and you don't have a powerful enough source or dongle, because this, you know, requires a bit of power. And of course, at least if you're someone who knows the kind of tuning you like and you're not going to play around with the switches, right? You want something just to use directly and enjoy the sound, you know, plug and play, then maybe you will get other IEMs, you know, that kind of give you that, right? Let's give it a final rating, and I will put the rating and what they mean first before I give it a rating so that you guys can understand what I'm talking about. And I will give the Arpegear Hane a rating of 3.5 stars, which means it's good, right? It's good. It's a decent IEM. It's a nice IEM, solid all around. It's going to be enjoyable for most people, and it has a standout feature, which is the tuning switches, right? So it kind of stands out from other IEMs as well. Yeah, and that's it, guys. That's it for today's review. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of the Arpegear Hane. What do you think of this IEM? What do you think of the idea of switches? Is this something you're going to use, do you think? And until next time, you know, peace.